Live from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to Podium Esports' coverage of Race 6 in Round 1 of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. We're happy to have you strapped into the virtual seat and along for the ride with us on this Thursday evening. We're alongside Jeff McConey, Josh Lee, and Justin Prince. My name is Evan Pasoko, our producer downstairs, Ryan Bauer, and as always, our camera is brought to you courtesy of Dougie Beard. We get deeper and deeper into the opening round of this first stage, guys, on the Road to Pro ladder, and we are headed to NASCAR's backyard this afternoon, Josh, to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Not as many question marks coming into this race as what we saw at the Lady in Black a few weeks back, I should say, at the Darlington Raceway. This is a racetrack where we basically know what we're going to see, but I think the field's going to be wide open as we look for potential 6 different winners.
And we are looking for that 6 different winner of round number 1. And this track, even though it's a little bit more familiar, this new style of it is a little bit less familiar. A lot of talk around the garage area that Justin Prince can hit on a little bit later, that the track is pretty slick. These trucks are having a bit of issues getting around the track, and it's going to be still a little bit of question marks about what exactly is going to happen over the long run and what exactly is going to happen when these trucks race side by side, like we know they will going into the run.
And to that point, Jeff, Charlotte's a track that everybody on the sim, I don't know if I'm going to say grew up with, right? But it is NASCAR's backyard, and for a lot of the time, it's the home of sim racing on the service, right? When you race Rookie Street Stocks, you're at Charlotte. All of NASCAR's top 3 series race at Charlotte, an official racing on the service. But to the point that we just heard from Josh there, this is a little bit of a newer Charlotte. This track has changed over the years on iRacing, and is it maybe the track that all these drivers started on several years ago?
You're absolutely right. It has changed a lot here over the years, especially with one of the more recent updates. About maybe a month or two ago, iRacing put out a huge update and made it so that you can run pretty much all across the racetrack. And Charlotte was one of the big names that people were talking about, saying you can run anywhere. You can run the bottom, the middle, the wall, 2.5 feet off the bottom, 3 feet 8 inches off the top. There is not a lane here that won't work and probably won't be used throughout the course of this race. People are going to be all over the track. It all depends on how you set it up, though, how the crew chiefs and car engineers and everyone work behind the scenes to get that truck perfect. So you have different areas where different people are going to be strong. You might see one person that is absolutely dominating in turn 1. They can get in there deeper than anyone else, but turn 3, they just can't do anything and they get run over. So it all depends, and Charlotte is a very difficult track. The way you drive 1 and 2, completely different than the way you approach 3 and 4. You have a very straight back stretch, a D-shaped front stretch. It's a simple looking track, but when you're out there, it's hard to be good at. The fact that it's so simple is what makes it so difficult, because everyone else is on a pretty even playing field.
Yeah, everybody's certainly a lot closer. I think those intervals are going to be than what we saw at Darlington last time out, where drivers had a little bit more leeway in terms of how they wanted to attack the track, how comfortable they were in that 5th round of this opening round of this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. But as we're now in the second half of this round 1, Josh, we've been talking about it all year here on Podium Esports. The goal is the top 70. At this point, most of these drivers have a pretty good idea how good they've been, how good they're going to need to be over the course of the next few weeks in order to make it to that second round. So I think that the pressure is starting to ramp up just a little bit coming into this one. You got guys thinking about points, and when you start to points race and try to calculate stuff, oftentimes you could overthink it. Curious if we're going to see drivers attack these races maybe differently than they would have, say, in the opening couple of rounds.
And they are running out of time to do that as well. We come into Charlotte here tonight. We're going to be switching gears in 2 weeks time into the Martinsville Speedway. Then from there, we end out the round at Dover. So 3 completely different racetracks to end out round number 1, and then we begin round 2 with Knoxville going on dirt. So it's only just going to become more of a challenge for this top 70 and anybody on the outside looking into the top 70 here in round 1 to try and have that best truck, get those good finishes on a variety of different race tracks and surfaces to grab those much needed points, because after Dover, they're not going to have any other chance to get in that top 70 until the 2022 eNASCAR season.
Clock's ticking, and if you want to find yourself in round 2, of course, into the next step on the ladder, and eventually that 2022 Coca-Cola iRacing Series, now's the time to do it. But Jeff, as we come to a familiar racetrack, it isn't quite the marathon that we're going to see with the Cup Series in a couple of weeks with the Coke 600, but it is a good, healthy race distance here tonight. Talk us through it with a look at our podium race analysis.
Well, it's 250 miles out there, 167 laps. For qualifying, you're going to be out there for 2 laps. But the fuel window, this is what's important. I've heard everywhere from 40 to 51 laps, but realistically, probably 40 to 45. And people are worried their tires may not even make it to that distance, 40 to 45 laps. So you've got 5 sets of tires in the pits. You're going to use those all up, I'm guessing here. So if you've got 6 total sets, you can go about 26 or so laps every time. So every 26 laps, we can expect to see people get ready to pit. But if they're out there on a full run, it's going to be 40 to 45.
It'll be interesting, I think, as the cautions fall through this race. I would just guess that the likelihood of us going green all the way pretty slim. It'd be fun to see how those drivers opt to juggle and to balance those tire sets, because if we get a couple of restarts in this race, you may start to run low come the end of it. Let's go trackside. Take a look at your podium starting grid here tonight from Charlotte, and it is Cody Bias on pole position with a 29.791. He will bring us to the green flag alongside the number 3 of Seth DeMerchant. Justin Bolton and Derek Bordeaux will double up at row 2. They'll start in 3rd and 4th with Donovan Strauss and Santiago Tires. Josh, our top 6.
Braden Boulos going to start on the inside over row 4. Jordy Lopez Jr., Logitech GLTC Sports driver, to his outside. Rounding out your top 10, Nicholas Shelton and Brandon McKissick, who currently sits 2nd place in the points right now. Colin Keister and Michael Cozy Jr. round out your top 12.
You continue it on through. Anthony Burrows and Corey Carpenter will double up for row 7. Drew Friedage and Brian Mercurio with a little bit of work to do through the top 16 positions. Tucker Minter and Briar LaPrade in and out of row number 9 in the running order. Jeff?
You also have Boyd Hogan out there, Casey Tucker, Landon Huffman making the run up here in top split, Matt Danson and Michael Garigula in row 12, Michael is, and then you have Connor Horn on his outside.
Blake Kinnear is going to end up down in 25th alongside Jordan Worth. Parker Retzlaff looking for a run through the field alongside Adam Gilliland through 27th and 28th. And then you got Justin O'Block and Dylan Alt, your top 30.
Rounding out your field will be Colin Bowden, Michael Fenleyson, Will Cooley, Jeremy Allen, and Justin Levine. 35 drivers getting ready to take the green flag here at the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Evan, let's see where we are in the world.
Let's talk about it. This racetrack opened back in 1960 by Bruton Smith and NASCAR legend Curtis Turner, with the longest running of the longest stock car race in history, back with the World 600. It has evolved into the mecca of NASCAR racing. 1.5 miles long, 24 degrees of banking. And the conditions, Josh, trackside as we get set to go green, a little bit different than what we've seen over the course of practice for much of today.
Definitely is, and you can see the weather conditions right there, right side of your screen. 7-mile-an-hour winds, partly cloudy skies with a track temp of 115. A lot of drivers were saying over this week that it was going to be way hotter than that, but we're currently sitting at 115. Not cold by any means, but definitely not as hot as maybe these guys were expecting when they set up those trucks.
Donovan Strauss, last time out at Darlington, added his name to the list of winners we've seen in these top split races so far this year, alongside the likes of Derek Bordeaux, Colin Keister, Parker Retzlaff. So we will see if we will add another name to that list of winners. Charlotte wide open, round number 6 of 8 in the opening round. A lot of critical points on the line, and with a couple of question marks in the likes of a short track trip to Martinsville and another shorter race at the Monster Mile, maybe a last opportunity to book some points. The pace car going to dive down to the safety of the pit lane, and the field is in the hands of Cody Bias as we say, let's go racing at Charlotte. So early in this race, pole sitter Cody Bias maintains the race lead. Justin Bolton will go third to second, and an early penalty for the 9 of Derek Bordeaux. You saw coming to the green, there he is on pit road, that 04 truck made an early transition outside to the inside. You cannot change lanes like that before the start-finish line. He was black flagged, forced to pit road, and with damage, Derek Bordeaux's night may be done before it even starts, as they're all chasing Cody Bias working lap number 4.
And that's just going to set Derek Bordeaux farther back than he already was going into tonight. An unfortunate time for that to happen for Bordeaux, especially so close to that cutoff. He needs any points he can possibly get right now. He's sitting comfortably in third, Evan, but we know very quickly drivers can start running way down the order.
And stuck right now up on the outside of that two-way battle in 3 and 4. You can see the number 99 Bashida behind. That's Michael Cozy Jr. looking on, but Burrow's able to tuck in line, losing out in the battle to LaPrade for 11th, but staying ahead of Cozy as you ride on board with the number 99 Chevrolet. Cozy up a position from the get-go in this one. Look at all the side-by-side in the top 5 down the back straightaway on the move. It's Santiago Tierrez down on the bottom of Justin Bolton. That'd fight for second and give it to the 10 of Tierrez.
Riding on board now with Donovan Strauss. He's going to sit back and sort of watch this battle happen here. He's up one spot, but this is the most important part of the race. Is right here at the beginning. You just be smart, you learn what's in the truck, you figure out how it's handling. You don't need to do anything crazy right now. Does he have the speed to get around these guys ahead of him? Sure looks like it to me, but he doesn't need to make those moves. Ride in line. You know you've got 4th place locked down. Just be patient here, and that's exactly what Donovan Strauss is doing.
And holding strong, started 5th in this race, up 1 to position number 4. And want to welcome in the 4th member of our broadcast team, Justin Prince, who's keeping tabs at all the drivers down trackside. JP, what you got on the 4?
Well, when it comes to Donovan Strauss, he mentioned when it comes to this race, he put in as much preparation work compared to Darlington for this one, but the main focus is get solid points for that organization. He also got a lot of great credit from Elliott Sauer on social media earlier today, where he called him the hardest working guy on the iRacing server, and feeling he was watching the next thing go each and every week. Donovan Strauss with a lot of praise and is focusing simply on making sure he's in a good spot for the final few races in the standings.
And he's been very consistent this evening, 5th in the qualifying, and didn't put down a time early in the practice session, a very short one before. It's always fun when these sessions don't have a long practice or a warm-up. That qualifying is our first opportunity really to see who's got speed, of course, in this top split event. But you can see these drivers starting to spread things out just a little bit as they rip and roar at about 178 miles an hour off it into turn number 1. Here's a good battle for 17th and 18th position. That is Tucker Minter's green Chevy down on the bottom of the racetrack, just ahead of Brady DeBulos, who will tuck in line behind Tim, looking to the inside. How about Landon Huffman looking for a spot? He's up too early. He and Retzlaff trying to make up for poor Q efforts.
They tried to make a look down to the inside of Braden Bulos. Couldn't make it happen there in turns 3 and 4. A lot of trucks starting to go single file is up front. Casey Tucker went down to the bottom of the racetrack on Drew Farinage. But up in front, it's all Cody Bias and Santiago Tierrez in the top 2 spots. Bolton, Strauss, and Jordy Lopez Jr. making his way up into the top 5 as they start to work their way to the back bumper of Derek Bordeaux after that penalty, and possibly a little bit of damage to that rear end. You can see damage on the spoiler in the rear deck lid as well to that number 04. So even more struggles for Derek Bordeaux, not only with that penalty, but now with damage that could be affecting his performance.
Yeah, but he was getting down to pit road at a turn number 4 on lap 1. He just got nicked by Donovan Strauss. That's where the rear end damage comes from. I think Strauss was fortunate enough to not get reciprocating damage on the left front of his number 51 machine. There's an onboard look with the Drew Farinage. You're exactly where he started, middle of the road right now, in 15th position, and you can see this mid-pack not spreading out much as behind him, some side-by-side action down to the inside of Minter goes Bulos. The the 10 green and black Chevy Silverado. Not going to clear this time at a 2, and using the bank, it is Minter, but he will now tuck back in line and says thank you to not forcing the issue there. These drivers do appreciate early in a 167 lap contest, Jeff, when you are not all over each other. A little bit of give and take never hurt.
If you're going to do some giving and taking, now's the time to start. I mean, the best time to start giving and taking is probably last lap, and the second best time is right now. So I think we're seeing a lot of patience here. People have learned their lesson. We've seen some crazy incidents that have stemmed from impatience. Now, taking a look all around the track, another person to keep your eye on, Landon Huffman. He's sitting in 19th right now, and that's the same Landon Huffman that streams on Twitch all the time, Huffman Live, and he does a great job over there entertaining his fans. He's gotten the full open face helmet and everything. He fully embraces it. Great friend to all the people out here on iRacing. He does a lot for the iRacing community, but he's got some real life experience as well in the Gander truck. So keep an eye on him. I think now that he's up in the top split, he's going to do some good things tonight.
We talk about some drivers maybe being afraid of the Martinsvilles and Dovers of the world coming up to end this opening round of this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Landon Huffman, very accomplished short tracker in his own right, a lot of super late model experience as well. He likely to be a fan of those shorter tracks. We'll see if some of that luck that he's had recently on the real life side of things can translate into some short track luck here on the service. Looking to back up towards this front train as you ride with Colin Keister. That's +4 as he rides into the 7 spot. Everybody is single file inside of the top 10. Just looking to see where that next move is going to come from. And to be fair, Josh, I had said that I would be surprised if this race goes green all the way. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but certainly getting through some of those close to wide moments early in the race helps our odds, as based on those numbers that we were looking at with the race analysis earlier, we're already about halfway through what you're going to want to do on these tires given the strategy and the length of this race.
And you look back to the last intermediate track we were at, it was the Atlanta Motor Speedway. We only had one caution there as well for Carson Hocevar in the infield of the front straightaway. So we didn't even really see a lot of incidents there, really car-on-car contact. We could see some in the later runs as the trucks start to get a little bit unnervy throughout the tire runs. But as of right now, I don't think we're going to see a caution at least for the first half of this race, because everybody's getting settled in, making moves on each other. Nobody seems to really have any an upset truck or really a setup that's not working for them in the beginning of this race. Everybody looks rather comfortable as a lot of drivers start to try and cut their way through the field, make up some small spots here and there before the first round of green flag stops.
Retzlaff on that shot there, and now Boyd Hogan on board with him. He's the driver just tucked in line. The number 96 machine riding 21st at the moment. There's a look up to Retzlaff off of the number 22 machine of Hogan, middle of the road, about 4 seconds off of the race lead. Everybody but Derek Bordeaux, who had the penalty early, is still on the lead lap and all under 7 seconds of the leader. I mean, there is not, as we take a look there, I mean, that was a good shot. Not a lot of separation, Jeff, top to bottom. You don't have the guys at the back trailing off. There's probably not much more than 2 truck lengths separating most drivers in the field.
Most of the field is spread out by less than 3/10 from the truck ahead of them, and that's really saying something. So I touched on it earlier where I said that the reason this track is so difficult is because it's so simple, and I think we're seeing that here. It's easy to get around this place. It's easy to be fast here, but the fact that it's so easy to do, and I say easy relatively, but the fact that it's not an incredibly difficult track like Darlington, it's fairly cookie cutter in a sense, but that's what makes it so difficult, because when everyone's got it sort of figured out, everyone has so much experience here starting in the street stocks and working their way up, that's where it becomes so difficult to find an advantage. So we're seeing these guys all right up to each other's bumper to bumper here. No one's really pulling away or getting a huge advantage. Now, that may change throughout the race, and that's going to come down to how the crew chiefs can adjust. So not everyone on iRacing is a driver. Some people like to watch, some people like to spot, some people like to be the crew chief, and they will sit up on the box and make calls and make adjustments. And this race, you're going to have to make a lot of adjustments throughout. So keep your eyes out. We might see people start to pull away and advantages come on the long run here, especially if there's green flag pit stops, because at that point the crew chiefs can show why they're the ones up on the box.
And some people like to take the easy way out and have no pressure and just pretend we know what we're talking about and commentate the races. That makes up for my lack of talent behind the steering wheel. Just continuing to watch this battle. That was Nicholas Shelton, that bright green Chevy that made the move. Going to be basically impossible to miss that number 29 to making any passes. He's in the number 9 spot ahead of Burrows, and that's Corey Carpenter trying to go side by side. Down on the inside of the racetrack there is Briar LaPrade, who started way back in the number 18 spot, but has been on the move early in this one. As you look off at the back of LaPrade, and we'll see if there's a counter punch, but I think Carpenter going to hedge his bets and stay in line for the moment. They're going to see what's going on up top. Colin Keister may be under fire for P8 here as Nick Shelton tucks in line Justin, but Green to get this one going, I'm assuming, going to play into the strategy for most of these guys.
And when talking to Brian Mercurio earlier this week about this race, he expected the race potentially, if it to go green, to have a 3-stop race in specifics, because he didn't feel too confident in a 2-stop, as you'd have to stretch it really far into your fuel runs. Of course, the cautions, if they were to fly, could change all of this, but he said he's not the biggest fan of Charlotte, and while he does enjoy racing here, sometimes you gotta push harder to get even better. And while he struggled in the Pro Series back in 2020 here at this facility, he feels still some negative vibes from that race and just feels that Charlotte is one of those tracks that could be one of the most awkward for him. Keep an eye on him, though, because he's put in a solid amount of effort this week to try and put in and dial in his performance.
Meanwhile, the interval at the front of the field starts to stretch, really, for the first time tonight. We're at the point in the run where we've already seen almost about 2 seconds of fall off compared to what we saw early, those first couple of laps. Best lap of the race out of anybody was Santiago Tierrez. I think third lap he got a 30.367, but these leaders are in the 32.2s at this point as Brian LaPrade looks up the road to a two-way fight between Keister and Burrows. And Jeff, will bounce back to you on this. That tire fall off, everybody can pretty much do the same thing in a truck at Charlotte for the opening 5-10 laps. This is where, though, when those tires start to go away, where we'll finally see some people spread out. That's why Bias is pulling away for the race lead, and you're starting to see a bit of a bigger gap right there between 7 and 8, a bigger gap between 12 and 13. Those groups start to form as we get a little bit more separation.
That is primarily coming down to how well these guys are taking care of their stuff on the long run. So with the way the physics works and everything else, the tire that takes the most wear is your right front tire, followed closely by the right rear tire. The right front really controls your entry and center, and the right rear is all about the exit. So if you are burning up that right front, you have to scrub off more speed when you are entering the corner. When you do that, you're moving the wheel too much. It means you're staying on the throttle too long. You're just burning it up. You're using too much of it too quickly. Now we're a little over halfway through a fuel run right now. So if these guys are smart, like Cody Bias is doing, he doesn't have to worry. He doesn't have to check one ahead of him. He doesn't have to worry about the guy ahead of him slowing up more than he is or anything of the sort. He just gets to run his line, run his race, and do what he knows he needs to do. Tierrez and everyone else behind, Justin Bolton down in the Charles, they don't have that luxury. They're watching that bumper ahead of them, and they're so close that sometimes they have to check up a little bit more. They end up burning up their stuff a bit more. It plays into the hand of the guy leading. He gets to save his stuff a little bit better, and that's why you'd rather be out front than a little bit further back. Take a look at the hands of DeMerchant now. That tells me he's really pushing this truck. Now he's going in. He's moving that wheel a lot. That's going to burn up his tires, but the more you're leaning on those tires, the faster you're going to be. Look at how loose that truck is. He is fighting that wheel. That could mean he's burnt up his right rear a little bit, or that truck is just not handling well on the long run. You want it to be just smooth as butter as you are just going in and out. I think if we take a look up at Bias in the lead, we'll see that he is just sitting comfortably.
You saw DeMerchant with the onboard there made a pass on his teammate Cody Bias, or not Cody Bias, I should say Jordy Lopez as we go on board with Bias. Let's see the difference between your race leader and the guys in the back. You got a little bit of that walking it into the corner action, and you'll see that when there is a bit of a loose condition. The guys don't want to just commit, they want to be flexible, and I always call it walking it into the corner as you have that little bit of seesaw action on the steering wheel. But he is the best car on track by a lot right now. Look at this backup from from Justin Bolton in position number 2 on back. All of a sudden, Cody Bias is nearly a second and a half to the race lead. He continues to pull away by about a tenth and change over everybody else, and it's starting to look a little bit like Daytona because all those Logitech Gialtis entries are starting to line up. You got DeMerchant there, you got teammate Jordy Lopez, and a couple more further down the line, the likes of Michael Cozy still in P12, but Bias really doing a good job, Josh, at separating himself up front right now, as these guys mid-pack just as tightly packed as they were lap 2.
And we haven't really talked about Cody Bias yet this season. Obviously, a lot of people will know about Cody Bias from his previous seasons in NASCAR, trying to get back up to that top rank in the Coca-Cola iRacing Series. But this season in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series, he sits 104th currently in the points, 34 spots outside of the top 70 for the cutoff, 893 points, only led 55 laps, and has an average finish of 20th. So he has not been having the round 1 that he needed to make sure he's in the top 70 come the cutoff. So this is a good sign for him to maybe grab this win, grab 2 consistent finishes at Martinsville and Dover, be in the top 70, and try and make a run at the Contender Series that's coming up in the winter.
Look at on-put look a little bit further back with Landon Huffman there as he continues to chase down Boyd Hogan. Hogan 18th, Huffman 19th. Kind of right in the middle of the pack here is, again, everybody continues to be pretty tightly condensed together. Already working lap number 33 of 167. A little bit further up, there's Parker Retzlaff. We talk about race winners. A previous intermediate racetrack winner from this year at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway to open up this opening round back in March. The other notable winners, as Josh had mentioned, Derek Bordeaux at the Atlanta Motor Speedway the week following. But as we get closer and closer to that magic number of 40, we keep thinking JP pit stops are going to be coming up at some point here, and the drivers are starting to strategize to see how they're going to line this race up.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And keep in mind, when it comes to Parker Retzlaff, though, he has been away from home for around 9 days as a result of his real-world race commitments, which has been where he said it's hard, where he's got to do as much as possible to try and balance both out. He mentioned that his team had put a lot of work into the truck while he hadn't been home. In turn, that affected his testing time for Charlotte. Right now, they say the truck is good. The passing has been difficult for them right now, where they've been struggling up on the high line, so a bit more of a patient run from Parker Retzlaff at the moment.
Sometimes that is key, just to take it a bit easier. Your highest running previous race winner from this year is Donovan Strauss, your race winner just 2 weeks ago at Darlington. There's a look at him running in the number 4 spot, just ahead of that dynamic duo behind of DeMerchant and Lopez. Behind them, McKissick, kind of the bookend of a group of 4. But you can see this whole pack from Bolton on back. Nobody really got a ton of space. Bolton has pulled away a little bit on Santiago Tires, so maybe Bolton a bit safer, maybe Tires a bit safer in the number 3 spots. But I mean, 4th on the back, just as tight as they have been all night. And Jeff, to compare notes, we hear some drivers discuss 3-stop strategy. My math would say if we go based on our race analysis that we do about 40 laps, and I would want a 3-stopper, 40, 80, 120. That roughly gets me to 167. What are the odds that we see different and differing strategies in the field tonight, or do we think it's going to be one or the other for most of the cars?
I think if you're out there and assuming we stay green to the end, I'm trying to stay out there as long as I possibly can. So I'm going to run it out to about lap 42 or so, and then pit 84, 126, and that'll take you right to the end. You want to break it up as evenly as possible. So I think that's what we'll end up seeing, but that's only assuming we stay green, which we've seen that before. We've had races go green start to finish with 37 laps in, and it's a great race so far. You got a battle for 4th there, but you mentioned Parker Retzlaff earlier, and there's something I want to touch on that's unique about that team. So Bobby Dale Earnhardt Legacy Esports there that he runs with, they've got a couple drivers up here in the top split. I think the most unique thing, though, is that their builder for the team, their primary builder, is also running in this race. He's one of the top drivers on the service. He's in top split for Road to Pro. That's Boyd Hogan. Boyd Hogan builds the setups for those teams. He's one of the head guys over there. He is unbelievably talented. He and I actually started on iRacing at about the same time, and I remember The first setups that I ever built were street stocks, and then he shared some of his with me, and he absolutely blew mine out of the water. So we've both learned a lot since then, but Boyd Hogan is one of the builders for that team, and he's out here in the race. He was battling with Landon Huffman. He's sitting 19th now, but just goes to show there are all sorts of people on this service that have different talents and everything. Boyd Hogan, he's working with a lot of these other drivers out here, and this team, like you said, the testing may not be there because of real-life racing commitments, but they're still putting together a solid effort tonight.
Josh, you noticed a little bit earlier in this run that we saw Minter up on the outside line, and now a couple more drivers joining him up there. Keister, McKissick, guys looking to the very outside. As we get deep in this run, we talked about this new Charlotte where those multiple groups looking drivers are really trying to work that top side of the racetrack, as some drivers towards the back already down pit road. That's Alt, Finlayson, and Cooley down and into the pits. We'll see if any of your race leaders want to be takers at lap 40, but looks like for the most part your top guys continue to stay out, but that top side more and more prominent the longer we got into this run.
Yeah, and Tucker Minter was trying it a little bit earlier on in the run. It wasn't really working too hard. He was trying to get around Drew for Farinage, went around the outside and just couldn't make it happen there. He went down to the bottom, made the pass, and now he's in front of the 5. But the top line is going to start to come in a little bit more, and it has started, but majority of these guys still running down on the bottom. Only driver I'm seeing right now even utilizing any lane above the bottom is Colin Keister to try and get around Brandon McKissick in the 24, as he'll go right on around, and we'll see if he stays up in the middle, and he will. So Keister's now starting to work his way up and using that outside line. The middle line seems to be working really well for the 33 Space Station Gaming Ford F-150. Brian LaPrade over the voice chat saying he's pitting, Bolton saying he's pitting, Minter, Mercurio, a handful of drivers coming in, Justin Bolton and more.
And it includes your race leader, Cody Bias. He's down pit road. Justin, here they come. Bolton, Tires, your top 3 all to pit road.
And when it comes to Justin Bolton, right now from his crew chief Dylan Duvall saying trucks loose, but right now it's having a good time in that machine. They're going to look to tighten him up a little bit to help out with the long run. When it comes to some of the air drivers of complete service, Dylan Alden mentioned where it's not one of his best tracks. They have been wanting to be careful going to the top and either the right front or right rear to try and make sure to manage those tires. As well, when it comes to Tucker Minter, he had talked about the preparation for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race impacting their preparation for this race. So, several drivers talking about potential performances, but adjustments coming from Bolton.
Not quite number 48 Ally Chevrolet speeds in the pit box, but a 14.7, pretty good for Justin Bolton there and company, as they all decided to come down to the pit lane that time through, and hands the race lead over for the time being to Jordy Lopez Jr. That's this group with Demergent second, Keister third, and we'll see if they have takers. Lopez is in, so is Keister, McKissick, Burrows. They're all going to drive down to pit road, locking them up a little bit. Some close quarters trying to get down to pit road speed here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Got to whoa them way up to 45 miles an hour. That was a bit tight that time through, but I just wanted to say I appreciate the confidence on Justin Bolton. He's already got the Coca-Cola banner on the windshield. His objective's pretty clear to get back to that top echelon for 2022. So now Demergent stays out all the way to lap 45. I don't think you're going to want to go much deeper than this, and Demergent will come down from the lead. Shelton from second, and Casey Tucker are going to lead some laps at Charlotte.
Casey Tucker, Michael Guerrilla, Matt Danson, Boyd Hogan, Jordan Worth. They're the last 5 drivers to stay on the racetrack. Tucker started in 20th and now in first. A great run for that number 28. And a handful of other drivers saying they're pitting now this time. So I would expect to see pretty much everybody in this top 5, at least 3 or 4 of them, come on down in. Here comes nobody from the lead group. Michael Guerrilla comes in, but that's it. Everybody else staying out on the racetrack, not coming in for green flag stops just yet. But Cody Bias now in the catbird seat to take home, or take back the lead that he will have after the remaining 4 drivers start to work their way into the pit lane. But everybody else in the top 4 still staying out on the racetrack, and not that much time left to pit for green flag.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be out there for much longer, but maybe just trying to stretch this one and catch a yellow. You can see how much off the pace they were compared to everybody else. Look at that. Casey Tucker couldn't even pit it that time if he wanted to, because look out. There goes Brian Beccario. There goes Michael Finlayson through. Maybe get a little bit tight here. Strauss and Alt were side by side. The 42 plays it safe and tucks in line before he drops down. So Casey Tucker getting eaten alive out there, but it is just those four who have yet to pit. And to Josh's point on that one, Jeff, Cody Bias maintains the net race lead. He's the lead car of those who have already completed service, and with Bolton, Tires, and LaPrat having pitted on the exact same lap as him, nobody really getting much of an undercut. We saw some drivers come down earlier, the Minters and the Mercurios, but it's not going to be enough to get them ahead of Cody Bias. He's still pretty in control of this race. Matt Danson will come down from the top four, so now just waiting on Tucker, Hogan, and Worth. And I mean, how long do you stretch it here? Obviously, at this point, these guys hoping for a yellow, or could they possibly be trying to think about a three-stop strategy? Not the three-stop, the two-stop strategy. Would you go that deep? I mean, is it even plausible, or are these guys just hoping to catch a yellow? Because you can see visibly, look at those cars out on the inside, how much time they're losing by being out here on this old tires.
If you're going to make it on two stops, then you need to make it to lap 56, which there's no real chance of them doing. So if I'm up on the box, I'm a big fan of the math and just keeping everything evened out. I leave it in the hands of the driver and let them do their thing. So I would have called him in right at lap 42. You break it up 42, 84, 126, and then it would be 168. That's what you're running to. Break it up into nice even chunks, just about. And if you're saying out these extra laps, I mean, yeah, you're leading laps, but that's just time lost. So you're banking on a caution and for things to sort of fall your way. But I would not try this strategy twice. But at the same time, their bet is already made. They've got to lay in it and try and run it out here. They're hoping for things to sort of fall into their lap. But if you're playing it safe here, you're expecting long green flag runs, then you're pitting 42, 84, 126 will be your last pit stop. And I'm calling it now. Lap 51, I've called it before, I'm calling it now. I think lap 126 just about is when we're going to see the last pit stops from the leaders if it stays green.
Well, Casey Tucker is going to come in from the race lead. Boyd Hogan also coming down. Those two drivers a little bit surprised that they would go on this strategy because they started in pretty good positions. I mean, Tucker was 20th, Hogan was 19th, so not the greatest. Much less surprised that somebody like a Jordan Worth would try this one, considering he was 26th on the grid. Maybe at that point in the 35 truck field, you're a little bit more inclined to gamble, but Jordan Worth is going to dive to pit road out of 4 this time, and Cody Bias way down at a turn number 2, far into the racetrack. Chased down by Tires, by Bolton, by LaPrade in a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 battle. Will pass him as he gets his service on pit road this time, and Cody Bias continues to control from pole. But Santiago Tires has been faster the last couple of times around. Josh, he has not gotten this advantage by an undercut or an overcut. They came down pit road at the same time, and that 10 truck has straight driven through the field from P6 at the start of the race, now just about 2 truck lengths off of the race lead.
And he is trying to get back up to those leaders. Bolton's been having a good season so far, pretty consistent as well, trying to make it into round 2 of the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Tucker Minter also having a pretty good day. Justin Prince, you have info on Minter in the 10.
Carly scored up 11 positions as he's now getting passed by Jordy Lopez Jr. He had mentioned, has talked about a little bit, where Charlotte had been in the back burner a little bit because of the work put in for Circuit of the Americas for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series on the back end. And with the short turnaround, their opinion has been a top 10 is what they'd be happy with the most from this camp. Right now, his focus is to just keep the momentum going, as he feels he's just about locked in for round 2 when you factor in the potential for drops as well. Right now, it's been where he feels it's been very line dependent for this race, and where that's where you've seen the top line come into play. He expected that top line to come up for a little bit. And oh, by the way, we've seen him coming earlier. He made sure to mention that he didn't want to be the last guy to pit. Instead, he became one of the first.
And on board with Santa Bercha, now we're going to see all those drivers who, pitted a little bit later start to pick off some spots. Bercha running 14th, 3-lap better tires at Retzlaff, 2-lap better tires, and Cozy up the road. I mean, the 57 is going to have a good opportunity here to make some passes. You can see Drew Friedage, the number 5 truck, the iRacing colors down on the bottom as well. Drew was one of the earlier drivers to come on to pit road. His tires about 4 laps older than the trucks that he's battling around, and that's why Cozy trying to make a pass up on the outside. That's Carpenter in the 30 up the road with the Sudoku colors, and then it's Brian Bacurio, the blue number 41. This is a huge gaggle for position 9 on back.
Everybody dicing and slicing for positions, and those positions will become important, especially if we remain green for this entire race. This could be the only time that you're around another car. Get by it, get that pass made, and move on to the next. 2 Logitech GLTC Sports drivers sitting on the outside of this train, and they go right on around the cars and inside. Now the 2 LTC Sports drivers go side by side. Seth DeMerchant and Jordy Lopez Jr. going side by side into the corner. There's we go on board with Michael Cozy Jr. right on behind in the 21.
Cozy up a couple of spots from the start of this race, was 12th on the grid, sits in 10th position at the moment, and there is your race leader, Cody Bias, continuing to pace the field. Now, early in this race, this is what we saw, Jeff. The drivers behind, top 6 or so, really didn't lose touch, and then it wasn't until about 3/4, maybe 2/3 of the way through the run that Cody Bias was able to get some speed. Santiago Tires is not going anywhere, neither is Justin Bolton, neither is Jordy Lopez, who you ride on board with in the number 4 spot. Is this cause for concern for Bias that the top 4 are getting closer rather than further, or is he going to bank on that longer run speed to bail him out here again?
He was strong on the long run last time, and I think that's where we'll see him excel again. Probably around lap 70 or so, we'll see him start to pull away, by my guess, unless Santiago and his crew absolutely nailed the adjustments, which is entirely possible. It's also possible for Bice and his team to have missed something. You go the wrong way, you think the truck's doing one thing, and it ends up doing another. I've had times where I'm so tight that I thought the thing was loose, or vice versa, so it really all depends. I think Bias is in good shape. If you're going to be anywhere, I'd rather be out front. Tires is a little bit quicker behind him, but not enough for it to be cause for concern. I think that could just be the result of him drafting up behind.
We'll see how it develops later into this run. Feels like we just got through the pit cycle, and we're already looking at about 18 laps on a run for the drivers at the front of the field. Closed it in on a halfway point in this run. That would take us to the cross flags point of this race. Battle a little bit further back down the running order. Halfway down the back straightaway, the battle between Nicholas Shelton and friends. He rides at 11th. The battle's going to be for 12th. Here goes Carpenter to the inside. Michael Cozy Jr. again selecting the outside as the defensive line, as we see the perspective from Anthony Burrows.
And Burrows and the Wallace Mobile going to go back down to the inside of Corey Carpenter in the 30. The 62 running the bottom line pretty well down there. Look at who's behind him, Derek Bordeaux in the 04. Now he is 2 laps down, but he is still running up here with these guys, so it's a little bit heartbreaking because you know the speed that Derek Bordeaux had in that Toyota Tundra. He's able to keep up with the lead lap cars and not racing them for position on the racetrack because he's 2 laps down after that penalty. So not a good day for Derek Bordeaux, and we always are wondering what might have been for Bordeaux if he wouldn't have gotten that early penalty. Now back on board, Santiago Tires running in 3rd, and he is right on the back bumper of Jordy Lopez Jr. Bolton and LaPrat very close together behind as well. This entire top 5, I'd throw in Colin Keister in 6th, all running very close together here on the racetrack as they head on to lap number 64.
And as this one continues get deeper, chances of this strategy allowing itself to play out grow and grow. Look at the battle now. To the outside of Justin Bolton is Santiago Tires. So side by side they go for the number 3 and 4 spots. It was really an attack move by the likes of Lopez, who was able to make it through to second, and now Bolton also on the bottom. Gonna get around Tires, and just as I say, should Cody Bias be concerned, 64 laps into this race, Gutierrez really now dropping off. And Gutierrez has the exact same lap number on the tires as Bolton, as Bias. Jeff, was he working it really hard? You talked about the draft maybe being a factor to keep him on the bumper to Bias there, but he went from the fastest truck on track to not even top 5 speed. He's going to lose another spot here, as looking to the inside on him comes a challenge from Brian LaPrade. I mean, just the 10 car just not sticking like it was 5 laps ago, really falling off a cliff more so than anybody else around him.
That could be the result of going the wrong way on adjustments. And when you are pitting here at Charlotte, especially with the track temp of, I think we started at 115 degrees, which that sounds hot, but I can tell you from experience that is hot out there. But you can get all the way up to, right now track temp is 128 degrees. So we're up 13 degrees. That makes a huge difference. This track is loose. There's just no grip out there. It's not responding the way you want it to. The smart crew chiefs were sitting and watching that and saw the track temp going up and said, okay, we're going to need to tighten these trucks up a little bit. We're losing grip. We need to just get it so that this thing will stay on pace for where we were before. And that could be the result of either no adjustments or bad adjustments going the wrong way on it. But someone who appears to have nailed their adjustments is Brian LaPrade and his crew. Now, those guys over at Lockdown Racing, they implement at least a spotter who acts as the crew chief. Usually, though, they have both a crew chief and spotter helping them out. So they have a full crew here. They're up in the Coke Series, 4 drivers up in the Coke Series, and they know really well what they're doing. So Brian LaPrade, he was talking on social media about how confident he was. I'm sure Justin Prince will have more information on that later, but he was very confident coming into this race, and he started off around 12th or 13th or so, and he's all the way up to 5th. Keep an eye on him, because if he's marching his way up in a field that's been pretty stagnant, that says a lot if he's able to get up to Bias at the front.
What I want to bounce back to you with that, you talk about the adjustments, and these drivers, I think, enjoy having a long green flag run because they can see what the truck does, short run, mid run, long run, and then try to, if they think it's going to go green, make some adjustments to try to get to the end of this race. Tell everybody tuned in who may not be on the pit box and making those adjustments, what options do you have in the race to make adjustments to the truck versus the options that you have trying to set it up pre-race?
So when you're setting the truck up pre-race, you have so many different options. It's an entire plethora of things you can adjust, which is why it's a great idea to find a setup guide online or purchase one. Sorry about that. Go and find someone and talk to people that know what they're talking about and what they're doing. So you can adjust everything down to half a pound in the left rear tire, and it will make a difference. Or you can adjust, put 50 pounds in one of the springs, or even choose where you put the weight, the ballast inside the truck, and have that positioned perfectly. There's so many small things you can adjust to get these things dialed in and perfect. And that's why they turn 100 laps, and then before they even make a change. And by the end of it, suddenly you've turned 2,000-3,000 laps when you're preparing for Road to Pro. Now, once you're in the race, though, your options become a lot more limited. You can change the tire pressures on all 4 tires. You can play with those, and those primarily control entry and exit. You can play around with it in the center. You can play around with your brake bias in the car, so you can change that while you're going, which isn't going to make too big of a difference here. You're not on the brakes too much at Charlotte. And the biggest thing that you change for the long run is the spring perch offsets. And what that does, in the simplest terms, is it helps control the car on the long run. So it will bring the back of the car up or down, basically changing the angle that the truck sits at. So if you, for example, increase the left rear spring perch offset, you can really take some big swings at that and go up 2, 3, 4. I've seen even 7 or 8 clicks on it. And that will make a big difference. So you do that to the left rear, and it will loosen the car in the long run. Now, you're going to want to do the opposite here. You're going to want to tighten this thing up. This track is getting hotter. It's getting slicker out there. And a lot of these guys up here, and you see Walter right there, get a little bit too loose. He's along for the ride. Look at him go. I love that camera angle. Thank you again to Dougie Beard for it. But you're going to want to tighten these things on the long run and help the driver in there not be all over the place as we get a really good look at Walter. Looks like he's having a great time out there.
And that's why, if I'm asking you a question, I keep it open-ended, because I've just been taking notes and I think I'm ready to go in a Daytona 500 with all my advanced race car knowledge now. And those are what these drivers have to work with, and furthermore proves the point that we talk about week after week, the fact that it is a team effort beyond just the driver being able to communicate what the truck's doing, what you want it to do, what it isn't doing, to the crew, getting feedback and then making those adjustments. Again, not just pre-race, but during a race, critical for finding success at this, one of the top series and at the highest level on the iRacing service. Watching Cody Bias, who has been reeled in a little bit by Lopez. Here's the line of cars behind him on board with the Pratt, who sits in the number 6 spot now. All of your race leaders, after 75 laps of green flag action, Josh, separated by less than 2 seconds. I mean, they are very tightly condensed together, and we talk about the fall off, right? Somewhere in the 2-second range. If you're in the 2-second range of the leader, that leaves a window open. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least the option there to look for an undercut, to look for the overcut, something to make a play for the race lead. Now, pitting 2 laps earlier than the leader from 6 seconds back, not going to help you out. Pitting 2 laps earlier than the race leader from 2 seconds back could give you a real opportunity late in this race. And I wonder if they stay uniform through the pit stops that we're only about 10 or so laps away from when we get to the midway point. Do they stay uniform through mid-race and maybe go with a little bit of a gamble on that back end for the final cycle of pit stops? Or are drivers already starting to have those gears turning?
I think, especially with the crew chiefs that Jeff McConey was mentioning earlier on in the broadcast, they're always thinking of the next adjustment they're going to make to the changing track. They need to think of the next time they're going to pit based on the changing gap to the car in front, or whoever you're trying to complete that undercut on in front of you. And looking at Jordi Lopez Jr., I would not be surprised if his crew chief says, hey, we're going to pit 3 to 4 laps earlier to try and get around Cody Bias. I think they might give that a shot. Justin Bolton might give it a shot. He can even go as far back as Seth DeMerchant, who sits 3.3 seconds back. He could have a really good race after an undercut attempt to try and get around a couple of cars in front of him. You talk about a couple of the drivers further back needing points. Michael Aurelia, I think of him try and just get some more points, get above that top 70 or stay in that top 70. So he's back in 15th. He can probably make an undercut, gain 3, 4, maybe even 5 spots to work his way up to the top 10. So we're going to need to see exactly what happens during these pit stops, and will anybody take that gamble? Will anybody come into the pits and have a strategy that the crew chief says, hey, this may or may not work. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens, because especially for those drivers outside of the top 70 right now, they're going to need to take some gambles to get inside the top 70 and have a run at eNASCAR.
In the back half of this run, Cody Bias starting to creep back to about a half a tenth a second better than everybody else inside of the top 5. Justin, that's where he made up most of his time early in this race. Bias has basically been on cruise control. What's he saying?
Well, to put this to be precise, from Jarrett Laver's crew chief, they're saying that the truck is handling exactly how it wants to feel right now. It's just about holding steady for them in that camp right now. Keep in mind, last competed in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series back in 2019. 25 career top 10s in that series and a victory at one point throughout his time there.
And is in prime position if he can keep this up, and if the cards can fall his way in a caution-free affair thus far, to get into victory lane in the top split here for the first time this season. Of course, we've touched on it all night. Parker Retzlaff, the winner of the season opener at Vegas. Then it was Derek Bordeaux at Atlanta, Colin Keister at Richmond. Bordeaux then got his second of the year at Talladega, and Strauss winning at the Darlington Raceway. The 4 different winners that we've seen over the course of the 5 races thus far. And off of the back of Donovan Strauss for position. I'll get it back to Seth DeMerchant. That is 7th you're on board with, and 8, 9, and 10 off of the back end. Pretty good battle as we get closer and closer to pit stops. 39 laps is the highest, I would say, Jeff, for the drivers who have been out there. Some drivers only been out there for 36, and you thought that basically splitting this at halfway is basically the call. That's about a lap and a half away. We really haven't seen anybody but Jeremy Allen come down yet Is there any logic in these guys pushing it maybe a little bit past halfway to keep some fuel in the tank should this thing need overtime a bit later? Or at that point, you'd probably just be getting tires. So what do you think?
Well, you know that you can go up to 50 laps. We saw it earlier if you're saving fuel, so probably 48 to 50 laps is the longest that you'll go. However, I really think the smart call here is to just come down at lap 84, and I think that's what we'll end up seeing here. But then again, I was thinking about it. Josh mentioned it, that these crew chiefs are always thinking, they're always working on something. There is the biggest missed opportunity in racing by a sponsor is Rogaine. Get in there and get with some, experienced crew chiefs, and the heck, throw sponsorship on a crew chief, because they are going to be using that product like crazy. They will be pulling their hair out at times with some of these long green flag runs. So if anyone from Rogaine is listening, that is a fantastic marketing opportunity. Mane and Tail already jumped on it. They're sponsoring the 00 for a lot of races this year. But at the same time, that's a shampoo company, sort of counterintuitive. Crew chiefs are going to be tearing their hair out with this one, but it looks like they're staying out past 84. We're right at halfway.
Halfway home from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, drivers starting to trickle to pit road. Minter has been down pit road, so he's from the mid-pack area, still waiting on your race leaders to come down and get service. In this one, Brian LaPrade over the radio says he'll be coming down pit road from position number 8. Always a good idea to say when you're coming down pit road, because you'll avoid the contact and the damage that Derek Bordeaux got early in the race with the back-end damage. And we also know as LaPrade is in from the top 10, locks it up again. These drivers maximizing everything they can down to 45 miles an hour. There's some of the further on down cars who have already cycled down pit road. Strauss says he'll be pitting from position number 6 the next time by, and I would expect once you get one or two of these top 5 guys and everybody else to follow suit, they normally don't enjoy straying too far.
Parker Minter coming out of pit road. Same thing with Michael Finlayson. A couple other cars coming in. Donovan Strauss is coming in a little bit too hot, trying to get that car woed down, and he locked up the tires on the number 51 machine. Hopefully he got it slowed down enough, because if not, he will be serving a drive-through penalty from the iRacing stewards. So
I don't think he did
enough. He might have gotten it slowed down. It looked like he was far on the brakes trying to get it slowed down. But either way, he's in his pit box grabbing those fresh tires. Same thing with Seth DeMerchant in the 57 behind him, and more cars starting to trickle their way in. Mainly your leaders still staying out. Santiago Tires comes in out of your leaders. Other than that, everyone's staying on the racetrack.
And he's getting out of the box without a hold, so clearly got it slowed down in time on the pit entry. Huffman says he'll be pitting from further on down. There's your last pit stop number. Everybody in the 40s and 50s, drivers who have yet to pit on this strategy. The highest running pitter is Brian LaPrade back in position number 26. So all these guys up front do need service, as Bias is in from the race lead. The 27 will come down. Lopez stays out. Bias is in from third. So here come the bulkier leaders down for service. Lap number 88.
Well, I guess I was a little off there, and I'm genuinely surprised Donovan Strauss got it slowed down in time. But it's a very difficult pit road entry, because you're exiting the corner about 170, and you got to get that truck slowed way down for pit road here. Very easy to overshoot it here. Not as difficult as Darlington, where we were at last time, but Cody Bias there looking for a strong pit stop. 14.3 seconds. Not the best, but not the worst. I think he'll be able to hold on to the lead here. We'll see how it all cycles out, though, at lap 90.
Yeah, pretty standard fare, and didn't get the undercut by many people, so I think that's going to help him as well. As you see the drivers at speed, he has to wait until out of turn 2 right there, blue cone and that white line on the apron, until he's actually allowed to blend up into traffic, so slows them down just a little bit. As now Colin Keister will come in from the race lead. Bias tentatively back in position at number 22. He is behind some drivers on track who have already pitted. So it'll be interesting to see through this pit cycle if he struggles. Look at that. Was that Gilliland at a 4, nearly spinning in the background of that shot on the pit road. These guys continue to push that envelope. There he is into the box. No penalty, but I think his concern was the barrels. Check this out.
Taking a look at a replay of Adam Gillen getting slowed down for the pit lane. McConaughey talked about it. Very difficult to get slowed down, especially from the banking. That's why with the All-Star race qualifying, send it into the corner, and he is drifting it in. He had it a little bit sideways, but he got it collected and right back is searching for that pit box. What a drift. I don't know. Out of the booth, guys, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 on that one. That was a really good drift.
That's right there.
Full send, right? That's not a half send. That's a full send on pit entry.
Definitely a full send.
That is a full send, and that's why every driver knows you have a brown fire suit. My goodness, look at that.
Corey Carpenter, look out. He nearly caused an incident as he came down the pit road and they squeezed 3 wide around him with Casey Tucker and Will Cooley. Check this out. He'll go to pit road. There's a spin. There's the 3 wide. That could have gotten messy, but your race leader is in without further incident and a good catch there. I believe that was Colin Keister, who is on the bottom right now, cycling his way on through. So Keister going to get on through, get out of the way. Casey Tucker battling for the lead just behind this spot against Corey Carpenter, who's down pit road. You got Justin Levine, who is the only other driver yet to pit alongside Tucker. Your net leader, one Briar LaPrade, as we see the entry to pit road there with another pit stop. So LaPrade has successfully undercut Cody Bias, so has Strauss, so has DeMerchant, so has Tires, and so has Lopez. So Cody Bias, somewhere in the cycle, losing some significant time, and he's going to be challenged really for the first time this evening, not with the clean air. You see him there. He's not in the race lead, and it's not particularly close either.
He's
That's
actually
a long shot.
He's actually a little bit slower than the guys ahead of him. His last lap was a 30.43. Actually, his previous was a 30.56, as my timing and scoring is a little bit slower. But up ahead, they're running 30.3s. So he's about a 10th off the pace now. That could come back to him on the long run. It probably will cycle out and be all right, but that's the point where you sort of look at that and go, okay, guys, are we set up too much for the long run here? We got to have a little bit on the short run as well. That's going to be interesting to watch here, as right now we're dodging some lap traffic. Donovan Strauss there up ahead of him. That's Briar LaPrade. He's got about 2 seconds up to him, but he's gaining. Donovan Strauss is definitely gaining. He's got a lap fresher tires, and that will make a difference here.
And it's not just the undercut that has hurt Cody Bias, because he did pit 1 lap later than Tires did, 2 laps later than Strauss and DeMerchant did. So I don't think there's any doubt, Josh, that helped. However, he actually pitted a lap earlier than Jordi Lopez did, and Lopez was also able to pick up time on him at the same time. So it is not just a simple cut and dry situation through the strategy. We will see what he can do. He has been the best car on the long run, but interval-wise, Cody Bias is about 2 seconds, 3 seconds actually, off of Briar LaPrade, who will cycle through to the race lead in this one as we go on board with DeMerchant. Jordi Lopez right there. This battle's for 4th and 5th, and Lopez to the green.
He'll try and sneak his way around the outside of Donovan Strauss. That is Jordi Lopez Jr. to the outside, battling for P2. It's 3 Logitech G-Altus Esports drivers. Sorry, 2 Logitech G-Altus Esports drivers. Elliott Sadler Esports driver, Donovan Strauss on the inside. Then Santiago Tires watching from behind. But Strauss going to get eaten alive by 2 Logitech G-Altus Esports trucks as around the outside they go. Santiago Tires joining him as they go right on around.
And through this cycle, again, you mentioned it, Ames Strauss, one of the drivers who had picked up positions initially, but he'll drop to the back of this group. Strauss now behind Tires, Merchant, and Lopez. So back end of this one as we approach lap number 100 here tonight for the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Still waiting on Casey Tucker, the lone one out there. Been out there for 48 laps in the race lead. Still waiting on him to come down pit road to complete the pit cycle. Then we'll recap everything, take a look top to bottom of the midway race break in just a moment. Look how aggressively those guys are down and on that white line, trying to get that truck to rotate as well. Early in the run low, late in the run high seems to be the trend that we've seen at least to this point, as next time by we'll have 67 laps to go.
Up there at the top of your screen, you might have seen it. The track temp is now at 129. We started off at 115 the last time. There it is, back up at the Brian Bauer, our director. So what that means, though, is that since their last pit stop around lap 42 or so, the track is pretty much the same temperature. It was at about 128 last time. So you're not going to be taking big swings here to accommodate for track temp. Now you're going to be making adjustments based on how the truck is handling. You want this thing to sort of be right where you want it now. It seems like the track temp has evened out. This is probably where it's going to sit roughly for the rest of the race. You're not focusing on track temp now. You're focusing on how's the car handling, what's it doing, and how are we on the short versus middle versus long run.
And as we look through, I mean, still 29 trucks on the lead lap, a pretty impressive number. Here's a look from Bolton as he rides in position number 8. He's directly behind Justin Levine. You got Donovan Strauss and some of the other drivers in the mix. There's Bias, nearly got into him on the back end, off it into turn number 1, but there is no contact. They'll be fine. And Casey Tucker is finally going to throw in the towel and come down to pit road this time, which means finally we can take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. So at lap number 103, Jordy Lopez Jr., who started this race in 8th position, has cycled through to a commanding race lead right now, about 1.2 seconds ahead of Seth the Merchant in the number 2 position. Then behind him, they battle for 3rd and 4th, but Brian LaPrade has it barely at the moment. That is Santiago Tires on the bottom, side by side for 3 and 4. Then Donovan Strauss back in the number 5 position. Then you have as well, Cody Bias just taking that spot away. So Bias trying to run his way through the field is up to 5th. Bolton 6th, and Stroud trickling down to 7th. Colin Keister rides in the number 8 position. That's up 3. Nicholas Shelton rides in 9th, and Anthony Burrows, Josh, rounds out our top 10.
Brandon McKissick in 11th, trying to hold on to his 2nd place currently in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series point standings. Tucker Minter in the 10, sits in 12th. Landon Huffman having a great run here in the top split in 13th. Michael Guerrilla making his first top split appearance of the season in 14th. Brian Mercurio will round out your top 15 behind the wheel of that number 41. Connor Horn now with a side-by-side battle between Michael Cozy Jr. and Parker Retzlaff for P17 behind. Into the inside now of Connor Horn goes Michael Cozy Jr. trying to get 2 for 1. As rounding out your top 10, you can see them both behind this battle. It's Boulos and Carpenter.
I think it's a good sign, but we can't even get through a battle of 4 cars without having to update the running order because there's so much fighting going on. Just outside of the top 20 is Michael Finlayson, 21st. He started 32nd. He is way up. So is Colin Bowden, who's come from 31st to 22nd. Will Cooley in the positive up to 23rd. Jordan Worth quietly back, that number 26 spot. He was one of the drivers on a little bit of a different strategy early in this race, ahead of Matt Danson, P25. Adam Gilliland sits in 26th. Justin Knobloch 27th, with Jeremy Allen, Blake Neer, and Casey Tucker, the drivers in the top 30. Only Justin Levine, the other driver on the lead lap, he's 31st. You got Drew Friedage, started 15th, but way down in 32nd, 1 lap down, ahead of Dylan Alt, who's down 2 in 33rd. Derek Bordeaux in 34th position, and Boyd Hogan, the only retiree of the evening, back in 35th spot. So look top to bottom at your iRacing Midway Race Break, with over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scanned tracks and cars to choose from. iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. So we weren't really sure how much that second cycle of pit stops, Jeff, was going to cycle things out. I didn't think these drivers would go for a big swing. And let's be clear, Cody Bias is not yet out of this race. You're watching the battle for a second. He is all over the Merchant. But certainly the complexion of this race has changed because Lopez enjoying this battle. He is 2.2 seconds in front for the lead. Here is Bias to the inside for second. He'll try to take it away from DeMerchant. And if he can close out this battle, he's got his work cut out for him, trying to chase down that 8 truck.
There he is, back up now to second place. He battled back a lot quicker than I thought he would, and Brian LaPrade is starting to fall off. We saw him sort of running up front there, but he seems to be falling off the pace a little bit. Just goes to show, maybe we need to give Cody Bias a little more credit. We've been saying out front, oh, he's got it a little bit easier. You know, he's not burning up too much stuff, but Brian LaPrade about 2.5 tenths off from the leader here. But Cody Bias fighting his way back up to the field and doing a great job of it.
And now it's clear that he can see 2.3 seconds the difference up to the lead. The battle is going to be for third. Bolton should also win this fight on the inside of DeMerchant. He will take the spot away, drop the 57 to set DeMerchant to position number 4. But last lap, Cody Bias almost a tenth of a second better than Jordy Lopez. So yes, the tides have changed, Josh, but I don't think we can count Bias out of this race yet.
He's going to need to show that long run speed that we talked about a little bit earlier on, and that we saw towards the end of the first green flag run. We saw him really come alive and start to put a gap to the cars behind about halfway through that run, and then all the way up until green flag pit stop started for the first cycle. He's already chasing down Jordy Lopez Jr. down to about 2 seconds now. The gap made up a tenth going down the back straightaway. He has the truck to beat. He got set back from this last round of green flag stops, but now that he can see Jordy Lopez Jr., nobody in between these two. Might be a lap truck in between them in a little bit as Jordy Lopez Jr. catches up to one of the cars on the tail end of the field. But other than that, gap is closing. Nobody in between them yet, and Bias has his eyes set to get back to the lead and get back to victory lane, as this season he has yet to do it here in the top split and sits outside of the top 70. This win is going to be huge for that team.
And I was still a little bit perplexed as to how Bias lost so much time. His outlap, so after he came out of the pit lane and back around, was a minute 2:925. You compare that to Jordy Lopez Jr. in the race lead. His was only a minute flat 0.2, so that's nearly 3 seconds alone on the outlap. That does count some time on the pit lane, but from crossing the start-finish line on pit road to then cycling it back out and crossing it again, he was nearly 3 seconds slower than Lopez. That is where Bias lost a majority of his time. They need to make sure that doesn't happen on the ensuing pit service coming up to get to the end of this race. Still watching this battle for fourth on back. DeMerchant has been on defense for the last dozen laps or so. Bias passed him, Bolton passed him, and now Santiago Tires trying to do the same up on the outside of the racetrack as Cody Bias and Justin Bolton both, in fact, closing in little by little on race leader Jordy Lopez Jr.
Right now, Cody Bias is gaining at about half a tenth per lap on the leader, Jordy Lopez. Now, that means with a 1.8 second lead, he'll need about 36 laps in order to catch him. So he's not going to do that by the time the next round of pit stops comes in, which by my math was looking to be about lap 120. Oh gosh, I think 126 is what I said. I'm not sure if that's how it'll still end up falling, because it looks like strategy's changed a little bit. I could be wrong, and I hope to see some people come down, and then I would feel good about being correct. But case in point of it is, Cody Bias isn't catching quick enough yet on Jordy Lopez Jr. Now, Lopez Jr. has been falling off more and more, and Bias has remained consistent throughout the run, so he could still be up there and catch him at the end. But at the current rate, assuming this rate stays the same, he will need about 30 to 36 laps. But as I say that, he's starting to get quicker, and now he's gaining about a tenth a lap on leader Jordy Lopez.
And this time by 50 laps to go from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Lopez continues to lead, but Bias and Bolton are closing with a cycle of pit stops still to come. You're watching the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series on Podium Esports. And back live for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway as Podium Esports' coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series continues tonight with the 6th round of the opening round, 6th race of round 1 of this 2021 campaign. And happy that you're with us alongside our producer Ryan Bauer and Justin Prince on pit road, Jeff McConey, Josh Lee, and myself, Evan Pasoko, upstairs. We are caution free now through 119. There it is.
Something.
On cue, lap 120. We have a yellow throughout the rest of the read because this changes everything, and the final cycle of pit service going to be under the caution flag.
And tonight on iRacing News, Evan Pasoko opens his big mouth.
I don't know
causes a
if I've
caution.
ever timed it that well. That was pretty. I couldn't have done that if I tried, and was just about to talk about, since we're caution free, Lopez had used a green flag. Pit stops to cycle through to the lead. It's not going to matter. Here's what happened. A couple of cars just all tangled up in the front straightaway, and there it is, 2 spinners. Let's pick this one up on the back straightaway, 3 wide into turn 3 and see what happened.
Looks like Tucker down on the inside. 3 wide, runs out of room, in contact with the front 2 cars, and sideswiped is Casey Tucker. He had nothing to do with that incident at all. It was the top 2 cars on the outside line that collided coming off of turn 4. Tucker collected the 24, and they were both down on the bottom, and Jordan Worth will be your lucky dog. A very excited Jordan Worth over the radio. As you can see, Tucker nowhere to go, just gets absolutely sideswiped.
Tough break, and race leaders now down pit road for service under this caution flag period. We were going to anticipate that happening at some point under green. That was going to be the big question. Would we see a big swing for position? As you'll see another look right here. I don't know if he was trying to cross down to the inside or just got a little bit loose, but definitely chopped down and got spun, and that led to the incident. There is no big change on pit road. Everybody goes for 4 tires and fuel. Jody Lopez Jr. maintains the lead. Cody Bias second, Bolton still third, DeMerchant, Strauss 4 and 5 as everybody was in for service. And this doesn't, I'll go back to you, Jeff, on this one, doesn't mess up the strategy that much. Of course, what's going to change is the fact that everyone's going to be on top of each other for the restart. But we were just about to see cars come down pit road. We're inside of 50 go to the end, so there's not that much changed by this. We're not burning an extra set of tires. You're not going to have to save to get to the end of the race. The big question is now, how do we handle traffic? We haven't had a restart since the very start of the race.
This is where it gets interesting. You're right. This just takes what would have been the pit stops at lap 126. I'm sure that every driver would have come down on lap 126, and I would have been perfectly right, just like always, and that would have been great.
Of course.
Of course. And so you're right, though. This doesn't change the strategy too much. They're still going to have just over 40. We were looking at about 42 laps. They're going to have to go about 45 here, assuming it stays caution-free to the end. But I don't know, Evan. Maybe later on you can say, oh yeah, we haven't had a caution in 30 laps. So tonight on iRacing News, Evan Pasoko comes on down and says, oh, we're caution free. Caution immediately follows, more at 11. Stay tuned, folks.
I don't think I had even finished saying caution before it flashed up at the top of the screen.
You didn't.
If anybody needs one, if you got a crew chief or somebody, Justin, down there that needs a yellow to help the strategy, have them shoot me a message and I'll make sure to help them out. Not everybody, though, Justin, will go back down to you. Update on pit road and through this cycle. Of course, Tucker not really happy the way that all cycled through, but what does this change maybe for some of the guys that you've been listening in on to the end of this race now that we're all going to be back and grouped up?
Well, for Tucker Minter, significant damage being repaired as you've seen right there, but for many drivers, this means essentially getting towards the end of this race on gas. Drivers have talked about, and we've seen throughout the race, the maximum some of them had gotten about 50 laps on the gas so far tonight. So it's now going to be potentially a dash towards the end of this race as a result of this caution flag. By the way, it should be worth noting that the most pumped up driver probably in this entire racetrack was the lucky dog, Jordan Worth. He was absolutely ballistically happy when he got the lucky dog. He did spin his tires off the pit lane, though, so there's the downside for Jordan Worth.
At least he gets back into the mix. So 30 drivers on the lead lap in this one. The lapped cars will be Drew Farinaj, Casey Tucker, Derek Bordeaux, and Dylan Alt. I think that'll be a pretty convincing four-way fight for the Lucky Dog, because when you get a late race yellow, chances are there may be some more. So I'm just going to get that out of the way now. Again, and then Boyd Hogan, the only retiree of the night, he went to the garage about 30 laps ago. Going to finish 35th and last in the field here tonight from Charlotte. So, how the turntables. First caution, going to go behind us this time by doubled up for a restart with 44 laps to go. Lopez, his big advantage was the gap that he had built on Bias. Bias and Bolton, for that matter, were faster than him. At the moment of yellow, may not be for the first 5-10 laps of the run, but those cars have been better long run tonight. And without the cushion, Jordan Lopez Jr. going to be in a big fight here for the race win from Charlotte. Pace car going to dive down it in. Lopez and Bias on the front row with Bolton and DeMerchant on the second, and we'll see what that number 44 Chevy does for the inside line. 123 down, 44 to go. Green flag back in the air. Caution and wrecking behind. It is a mess in turns 1 and 2, and Blake Neer is in the catch fence in the center of the corner. We'd watch your race leaders battle it out. Lopez had controlled the restart. Bias got it back to him, but this is what slows us down. This calamity, 3 wide. The 4 wide in front causes a spin. They come up and block the track, and that is a massive incident in turn 1.
The big one at Charlotte strikes again. Take a look at this whole wreck here. From the beginning, a little bit of contact up ahead. Some drivers got a little bit scared. Someone up on the wall there. And then everyone else gets checked up. People are carrying more speed, trying to take advantage. They get 4 wide. Oh, and someone's in the grass. And there goes, I think that's Colin Keister around. And then it's just nowhere to go. Someone used someone else as a ramp. Wow, that's, look at the 36 truck up here towards the front. He's narrowly avoiding disaster. That's sort of the hot zone. He's up towards the front. Parker Retzlaff got checked up, and you see right there, just 4 trucks wide is not going to work.
The 4 didn't work, and then the 3 behind Josh made it impossible for any of those trucks to avoid it. There's the touch, and look behind. There's nowhere those trucks can go. The initial contact puts everybody low. They stay on track, and then once those 2 snapped back up the hill, that was a disaster waiting to happen. That's at least a dozen cars involved in that incident.
And a dozen fast cars of that. I think we can classify this wreck as the definition of the accordion effect. Just everything happening at once, one thing leading to another, and a huge traffic jam in turn number 1. A handful of cars were able to get through, notably one Logitech GLZ Sports driver. I couldn't exactly point out a number, but one of them was right in the middle of it and got out clean and safe. But on board now with Connor Horn, and you can see him just barely missing all of the incidents behind, because pretty much from him on back, it was a parking lot down in turn number 1 that not a lot of drivers were going to be able to get through. We're on board with Derek Bordeaux. He is racing right up to this incident. And we'll see it happen right in front of him. There's the 4 wide. There's the smoke. He has to choose exactly where he wants to go. The car's flipping in front of him. He chooses the apron, and he chose right. No damage to that 04.
This is one of those
Some
times,
survived, but most didn't.
this is one of those times where you hear the worst thing you could ever hear from a spotter, which is just, because how are you supposed to describe that to your driver? How are you supposed to let them know where to go or what's happening? That's one of those times where you hear just over the radio, they key up, they're about to start talking, and the worst word that could ever come out of a spotter's mouth happens, and you just hear, wrecking.
Yeah, there's no real guidance that a spotter is going to provide on that one. That's the you just drive through it and hope for the best. And I think the yellow may help Lopez at all of this, Josh. I mean, Lopez got the jump on the restart. He got a good jump. There really wasn't that much of a fight for second. Merchant or even Bolton weren't able to really get up on Bias. So Bias had reeled in Lopez and got right to his bumper, as we see Matt Danson's perspective on board, and we'll take the trip all the way around and you'll see what preceded that wreck. But I almost feel like a bunch of yellows late may help Jordy, because on a green run, again, those longer runs has been Cody Bias's bread and butter tonight.
That is a good point, and I think as we watch this wreck develop right here, there's a lot of cars getting loose in turn 4 as well, and then it led to the traffic jam up in front. We'll take a look and see how they were able to get through this incident, and just right up in front of him, but he made it through just barely. Able to keep that truck clean. But regarding Cody Bias, we haven't really seen him in this position yet. The short green flag run we saw him in right after the second round of green flag pit stops, he was cutting his way through the field. So I think he might have short run and long run speed. We just have really only seen the long run speed. He might be able to get past Jordy Lopez Jr. very, very quickly. He just needs the right opportunity to do it. With Lopez running right on that bottom line, right where Cody Bias is running, he's either gonna need to go to the outside or get an amazing run off the corner and swipe him down to the inside to take that lane away.
And there's no guarantee how the end of this race plays out. Cautions and race starts and whatnot, but certainly things have changed and adjusted. What's the latest as this race gets pretty crazy compared to a tame one for the first 3 quarters?
Well, when it comes to Justin Bolton's camp, they felt better if this race went green for them because of how their long run pace is in their specific truck. Keep in mind, they were blistering quick along to Cody Bias, dialed in, closing in for that race lead for the cautions. For Donovan Strauss, it feels like this has made things a little more tense for their camp, but their focus is to see the checkered. It's a big picture race for them at the moment.
Big picture, I think the overarching theme, it's easy to get caught up in a battle late in this race, but this is the 6th round of 8 in the first round of this qualifying iRacing series. Next time out, Martinsville, June the 3rd, Dover, June 17th. Then we'll know the 70 drivers that move on to the next step, but there's a lot of points on the line here tonight from Charlotte, and no hesitation. The teammates go on the inside. Lopez, here comes to Merchant now for second.
They're going to be side by side heading down into turn number 1. Right on around the outside goes Seth DeMerchant to take over P2. Bias going to fall to P3 as they continue to run off of turn 4 to the back straightaway. Side by side, still a little bit further back as Bias tries to cover off the spot from Bolton. Bolton now going to stay in P4. A huge dive up the inside for Briar LaPrade to take that spot away from Donovan Strauss. Rides him up the track as they battle for 5th.
It was a coordinated restart. Lopez DeMerchant went right away, and it gives Lopez a critical buffer with Bias now back in 3rd. Riding on board a little bit further down with Brian LaPrade. He threw it down to the inside of Donovan Strauss. They are side by side for position 5 and 6, getting pushed as Colin Caster gives him a shove down the back straightaway, and LaPrade almost clear. Does Strauss fight back? He will. Holding each other up here at battle for 5th on back.
This is where it starts to get a little crazy. Everyone now trying to find their place in line. They know how difficult passing is. They've seen it all night but with 35 to go, you want to make sure you are as far up as you can be. LaPrad's been struggling on the long run here. We saw it. He's tried to do some different strategy things to make it work. Now, I think we're going to see a little bit of a battle here. I was going to say some friendliness among teammates there for first and second, but Cody Bias, he does not care about those teammates up ahead of him. He wants that spot. He wants that lead. He's got the speed. He's got the talent to get it done. Let's see if he can get this done, though.
And now DeMerchant getting forced out of the way. That buffer is going to fall apart quickly. A big bobble for the 57 up on the outside. As you look off for the door, Cody Bias. He'll try to put the battle for second to bed in 3 and 4. Yes, he does. Cody Bias now back to second. Bolton to the inside of DeMerchant with 33 laps to go from Charlotte. It is an awful long time for Jordy Lopez, who's going to have an eye full of the rearview mirror.
And exactly what Cody Bias needed. Get back to P2. Just be him and Lopez. But here comes Justin Bolton. The 10 trying to walk away with his first win of the season. He sits in P3. Right behind him, it's DeMerchant and LaPrade rounding out your top 5. The entire top 10 single files out, coming across the line. Can Bias make a move sooner rather than later? He peeks to the outside. He's going to go for the lead. He does. Side by side now with Bias running the middle line through 1 and 2, trying to take the lead back.
Lopez continues to protect the bottom. He is going to give Cody Bias the outside line, but is that a mistake? Several drivers have been able to make the outside work tonight. Bias really hasn't ventured up there, but he'll stay on the door of Jordy Lopez side by side for the race lead with 31 laps to go from Charlotte. Bias the advantage to turn number 1, and in the center of the corner, Lopez tries to fight back, but he's just not going to have enough, and Cody Bias will storm back to the race lead.
Now that took a lot of tires out of his truck there. That was a lot to try and get around Jordy Lopez. He's going to have to take care of his stuff now and be careful. That's just half a truck length separating them. Briar LaPrade now looking low. He's looking for more, and now he's fighting for 4th place. But 1, 2, and 3 are like a CSX train, just bumper to bumper. LaPrade now on the bottom, fighting with everything he's got. Like I mentioned earlier, he's been struggling on the long run. Let's see if he can make the bottom work. Seems like the outside's got some power. Donovan Strauss is looking to capitalize as well.
Remember, DeMerchant not great up top. That's where he lost the battle for second and then third, as both Bias and Bolton made a move on him, but unable to hold it on the inside as Briar LaPrade. You can see it with the onboard look there. On board with Strauss behind, just got a little bit too tight to keep that truck on the bottom. Tucks in line. They'll reset and try again. Take this moment, your top 10 single file for a split second. Things aren't done up front either. Looking off of the back, a race leader, Cody Bias. Lopez still within a truck length, and Bolton harassing him as the 10 Ford tries to break through to second, and now side by side for 5th behind. LaPrade again now fighting side by side with Strauss.
LaPrade trying to get as many positions right now as he possibly can, but now falling back under the clutches of Donovan Strauss. They were side by side a couple of laps ago. Strauss now running the outside line. Joining him up there is Colin Keister and Santiago Tires. The middle line starting to come in, and it's starting to be usable as Strauss covers the spot barely on Briar LaPrade, and now around the outside of LaPrade comes Colin Keister looking for the spot in that Space Station Gaming Ford F-150, and he gets it. LaPrade falls from 5th to 7th through turns 3 and 4. Now side by side behind, it's Tires and Shelton.
Santiago Tires was much better off before the caution flag. He is trying to make up for some of that momentum lost after he was looking good at the midway point in this race. Started 6th, he's down at 8th, but has been as high as the number 2 spot this afternoon. But he may be more worried with the likes of Shelton, McKissick, and Burrows behind him than he is with the likes of LaPrade and Keister up the road. On the inside, up front, everybody continues to run the bottom. Lopez has been able to hold off Bolton. And to be honest, Jeff, I thought Cody Bias going to the race lead was going to set sail, but Jordy Lopez Jr., pretty impressive. Nobody has been able to hang with Bias, though, with 30 laps on the tires. They've got 21 on them now. Will that cliff fall off happen again?
We've seen how strong Bias is on the long run. Once he's out front, he stays up there. He's led so many of the laps today. He's been the dominant truck. He's the one to beat tonight. Now that he's back up front, this is going to be very difficult. I thought that Jordi Lopez would be able to hold him off by holding on to that bottom there, but just couldn't do it. That Bias truck is so strong. A 31.721 for Bias and a 7.03 for Lopez. He's gaining a little tiny bit, about 20,000 separating the two per lap, but all in all, catching the guy is one thing, passing him is another. I don't know if he's even going to catch Bias.
That is the question, and all these drivers, outside of just the battle for the race lead, these cautions have grouped cars up where one time they were 4 seconds apart for a battle, 3 seconds apart for a battle. Now the opportunity to gain spots, counterpoint, the opportunity for the guys behind you to make moves as well, and for you to lose positions. Nicholas Shelton has been steady, runs exactly where he started this race. Again, this is who I said Tires needs to be concerned about, because look at the group. Shelton, McKissick, Burrows, even Guerrilla on the back end. Michael Finlayson, Jeremy Allen not that far back either. They are all stacking up behind Santiago Tires, and if he gets moved to the outside, he could easily lose 5 spots in a handful of laps. You can see how tight this mid-pack is.
And all scrambling for spots on the racetrack as well. Only 23 laps to go. Time starting to run its way out. If you want to gain spots on the racetrack, now is the time with everybody still bunched up. But out in front, still Cody Bias. And remember back to the first run and even the second green flag run before that second round of green flag pit stops, nobody could catch Bias under green to take the lead. They had to do it on pit road during the green flag stops. That number 27 is the fastest truck on the racetrack. That number 27 is the fastest out in front, and it's going to be very difficult to catch him for Lopez behind. Bolton, DeMerchant, Strauss, Keister, LaPrade, Tires, Shelton, and McKissick, your top 10 as they head back to 1.
It was a tight squeeze with your race leaders as Casey Tucker, a lap truck, was up on the outside on the front straightaway. They're all able to make it through, but your race leaders had to catch him right on the exit at turn number 4, and I think Casey Tucker's blowing up on the back straightaway, so his not going to be done. Already several laps down from an earlier incident, but now your top 4 with some space. Still Bias 1, Lopez 2, Bolton 3, DeMerchant 4. Can anybody come up with a late night special and try to catch Cody Bias late in a run where it has been the 27's wheelhouse? The caution and the pit cycle appeared to maybe put that in jeopardy, but Cody Bias has allowed his speed to do the talking tonight, and next time by he will see 19 laps to go in this race. They will lap Colin Bowden here in a moment. Should not be a factor for the race leader, but if I'm a leader late in a race, anytime I see any traffic, it always makes me a little bit nervous.
As it should. This is the last thing that you want, is to catch someone at the wrong time. You want to catch them on a straightaway and they just pull down, get out of the way. The worst place to catch them is on corner entry, or especially corner exit. You don't want them messing up your corner exit. Now lap car gets down out of the way, or gets up out of the way, excuse me. Bias will get by corner exit, but Jordi Lopez is down below him on corner exit. That's going to slow him down. Taking a look at their laps here as they cross the line, they've been really close, just a couple thousandths apart from each other now. But once they cross the line here, I'll have to check it again on timing and scoring, as mine is frozen up here. But taking a look at it, their last laps, a 32.175, a 32.211 for Jordi Lopez. So he lost about half a tenth there. And he was running just about the same lap times, if not a little bit quicker than Cody Bias, but catching that lap car at the wrong spot cost him about half a tenth.
Yeah, that was the slowest lap for Jordi Lopez since the first caution of the race and the ensuing restart. So the lap traffic clearly held him up. That time it goes down into the ones with the 32.191. So he did lose a little bit of time there, but it wasn't awful. Not a good place to catch a lap car on the exit at the corner, but he continues to hold Cody Bias and keep him honest. Keep pressure on the 27. Look at this battle in the middle of the road. Anthony Burrows in the 62 is trying to get away, but you've got Tires, Shelton, Bowden, Guerrilla, and company 3 wide at a turn 4.
Guerrilla in the middle of that run. Fenlison on the inside line as everybody shuffles. A little bit of contact further back. That was between Dylan Alt and Landon Huffman as they tried to go down into turn number 1. Slight contact in between those two. They keep it straight and we stay green. Still 2 by 2 for most of this group as Alt now gonna go down the inside of Jeremy Allen to the outside. So Guerrilla and Fenlison side by side in front. Tires and Shelton side by side in front of them as they work back to the stripe.
And nobody tell Cody Bias that these guys outside of the top 10 are all over each other, because he does not, I think, want to have to go through a restart procedure and, most importantly, a pit strategy decision. With tires available, that, I think, would be the big question mark. Shelton bobbles a little bit. So did Finlayson up on the outside. It is a 5-way battle for position number about 13th or so on a back. If you want to throw these immediate cars into it, toss them all into the mix. It's about a battle for 10th position on a back. Is up front, Justin Bolton trying to hold offset the Merchant. You ride with P4.
That was a close call back there. Looked like, I think that was Michael Fenleyson got a little bit loose there on the bottom and managed to hold on to it. Still up front though, now they're back to just about even lap times at 293 for Bias versus Lopez's 286. These two are running the pretty much identical lap times, but you can't run identical lap times. You have to be quicker than them. You need to find that half tenth. You need to find a full tenth out there. You need to get to the back bumper of the guy ahead of you. Being 1/1000th of a second apart like they were last lap is not going to work for Jordi Lopez. He needs to find something, and he needs to find it quick.
You see the clock in the top left-hand side counting to 13 laps to go. We are running out of time in Concord, North Carolina. It has been Cody Bias's race, but there were moments. Lopez through the middle race pit section on the restart. Multiple times that went into doubt, but I think in the end, the consistency has been Cody Bias' best car on track. This is normally where he has opened things up in the run so far tonight. But Lopez, Bolton, I think, holding him more honest than anybody has all night. Question is that going to be enough? Watching a battle for 11th position on the back. They nearly touches. That's Santiago Tires on the outside, and Michael Fenleyson working down on the bottom of the racetrack. You got Guerrilla on the red and white number 15 in the mix as well. Dylan Alt going to tuck up in line ahead of Brian DeVaccario. If there's going to be a problem, this is where it's going to come from. You have 6 trucks within half a second of each other back there.
Everybody trying to get as many positions as they can before the checkered flag comes out. Running out of time. Only 11 laps to go out of 167 that is scheduled to race tonight. As we go on board, Jordi Lopez Jr. trying to catch Cody Bias up in front after Bias led so much in the first half of this race. Lost the lead after the second round of green flag pit stops. The caution helped bunch the field back up, and now he sits in the lead, only about 2/10 ahead of Jordi Lopez Jr. But Evan, that's the only 2 seconds that he needs to be in front of him. He doesn't need to be pulling away. He just needs to hold them behind in second place to keep this lead, and that is what is going to be important for Bias, because like we mentioned, coming in, not sitting anywhere close to where he needs to be in the points, 104th. A lot of points to make up. Currently on that cut line in P70 is the driver of, one second please, the driver of Luis Sanhalso. So he needs to try and catch up to him, and it's only about a handful of 200 points that he needs to catch up, which is a lot, but 3 consistent finishes, including the win here at Charlotte, that is going to make for Cody Bias to at least have a chance at getting into that top 70 and have a chance of getting back to the top ladder of the NASCAR competition.
It's a duality that we've talked about several times this year, Jeff. The fact that with multiple splits happening, the race winner from split 2, the race winner from split 3, and even some of the other higher finishers from those lower splits are actually going to score more championship points than if you finished at the back of the top split. So for some drivers, it's better to be a fast car in the second split versus being an okay car in the top split. That is not a conversation that Cody Bias has. Cody Bias belongs belongs in this top split, and he belongs against the biggest of the competition, and there would be no better way to get closer to that top 70 cutoff than with the top split win, his first of the year, if he can hang on.
We just saw a transfer there for second place, and those are two teammates, Seth DeMerchant and Jordy Lopez. I think they're saying, we're finishing second and third no matter what. So if Seth DeMerchant thinks he can go and catch Cody Bias, then let him by, give him the 7 laps to do it. Last lap there, a 4:02 by DeMerchant. Cody Bias, a 4:67. 10. DeMerchant has a chance here, but getting to someone's bumper is one thing, passing them is another. But DeMerchant, he's quicker based on lap times, and looking like he might have a shot here with 6 to go.
Last lap, Seth DeMerchant was the fastest driver on the racetrack. Not the first time we've seen DeMerchant and Lopez swap out a spot in the running order tonight, this time to the benefit of the 57 with 5 laps to go from Charlotte. It's a 4.76 for Bias and a 4.59 for DeMerchant. A little bit quicker, but not enough pace at that rate to catch him before this race is over. What can Seth DeMerchant, if anything, pull out? He started this race in second, but it's been a while since he's been in that runner-up position. Can he close out the late race charge as Lopez slides a little bit further back in P3?
Can he even get around him? That's the thing. It's one thing to catch the car in front. It's a completely different thing to pass them. And with DeMerchant slamming the wall, coming off at turn 4, Jordy Lopez Jr. goes back into P2. Now they're going to have to completely regroup. And oh, by the way, losing time to Cody Bias now on board with Seth DeMerchant. As you can see him get very loose coming off of the corner, slams the wall.
Overdrove it and throws away an opportunity to fight for the race win. That's the second time I've seen him do that same thing, loosen turn 4 and catch the wall. Did it in the first half of the race. That cycled him back to deeper in the top 5. That's why I said it's been so long since we've seen him up in number 2 spot, and that basically takes away his hopes of winning tonight at Charlotte. The battle for 13th continues on between Dylan Alt and Michael Finlayson. They continue to fight actually for 12 in 13, some 5 seconds back of the race leaders, but what was about to be a nail-biter finish, now just a matter of running out the clock. Cody Bias will see popsicle sticks in the air, 2 laps to go from Charlotte.
At this point, Jordy Lopez knows he's waiting on Bias to make a mistake, and Bias knows all he has to do is get this truck around a couple more times, 2 more times. If I'm a spotter, I'm up there saying, keep it calm, you've got this, it's your race, but just stay calm. The worst thing Cody Bias can do is change anything. What he's done has worked, he's quick, he knows it. He's coming to the white flag here. All he needs to do is just 1 more lap around Charlotte, and he'll be tonight's winner.
Started from pole, dominated for much of the first half, but had adversity. Lost the race lead through the green flag cycle at the midway point to Jordy Lopez Jr. Was working on rolling him in when a caution flag came out to set up a handful of late race restarts. Drove from 3rd to the race lead, fought off another challenge by DeMerchant, and he is going to be home free in turns 3 and 4. Cody Bias, final time at a 4 at Charlotte, and your qualifier series winner in Concord.
Side by side coming to the line. I believe that was Tires and Hoffman that came across the line side by side. But Cody Bias, what a win. We've talked all season long about the struggles that Cody Bias has had. Came into today 104th in points, needing to get up into the top 70. This is going to catapult him up in the point standings and could be the race that puts Bias into the top 70 to make his way into round 2. And we'll have to see through round 2 in the Contender Series if he can make it back to the top step of eNASCAR competition. But Evan, he's going to burn it down on the front straightaway.
See if he can make it through to the round 2 to begin with. A big step in the right direction. He'll have 2 weeks more to do it, but Denzood Racing going to put that Duval Creative Toyota Tundra in victory lane. Cody Bias, top split winner in the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. He is now through 6 rounds, the 5th different race winner, joining the likes of Retzlaff, Bordeaux, Keister, and Strauss, and there is the celebration on the front straightaway. Let's talk results from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Margin of victory 0.7 of a second at the end of the day, but that hardly tells the tale of that 30-some-odd lap run to the end, in which he had to get by Lopez and hold off that counterpunch by DeMerchant. So Lopez ends up second, and Seth DeMerchant does hang on for third, just squeaking out Donovan Strauss and Justin Bolton, who come home inside of the top 5. Colin Keister ends up in P6. Brandon McKissick quiet for P7. Brian LaPrade ends up at 8th. Anthony Burrows will cross the line in 9th, and Nicholas Shelton rounds out your top 10.
In 11th, Michael Carrillo. Great run for him in his first top split appearance of the season. Dylan Alt, Santiago Tires, Brian Mercurio. Tires and Mercurio came across the line side by side in a photo finish for that 13th spot. Tires will grab it with Landon Huffman rounding out your top 15. Jeremy Allen, Michael Cozy Jr., Justin Levine, Tucker Minter, and Matt Danson round out the top 20 on the field.
Michael Finlayson came home 21st, Connor Horn 22nd. Jordan Worth, very excited about his lucky dog, comes home in 23rd tonight. The first car lap down, Derek Bordeaux battled back after a rough start with some damage that's beyond frustrating for him. But 24th, Colin Bowden 25th, Drew Farinaj in 26th, Blake Neer 27th, Will Cooley 18 laps down in 28th, Justin Knobloch in 35 laps down in 29th, and Casey Tucker rounds out the top 30.
And then the bookend the field here this afternoon, all of these drivers out of it by the time it was all said and done. Corey Carpenter, Parker Retzlaff, Adam Gilliland, Braden Boulos, and Boyd Hogan, 31 through 35. That's a look top to bottom at your podium full race results. Let's go trackside, talk with some of these drivers, beginning with Donovan Strauss, who comes home at 4 tonight. Josh Lee's with him.
Well, Donovan, a great run for you tonight. Trying to go back-to-back after your win 2 weeks ago in Darlington, but unfortunately you weren't able to go to victory lane here at Charlotte, but still a very good fourth-place finish, especially after battling back earlier on in the race. How was it from behind the wheel of the number 51?
Yeah, we qualified good, and then we struggled the first run of the race for some reason. I didn't feel that at all in testing, so I was kind of shocked when we struggled the first run of the race. I think I fell back to like 7th, and then we made big adjustments on the first pit stop. And I mean, I feel like we had something to go with Cody, and we were just on uneven tires at that point, and we had the caution, and then I was battling Breyer on the restart, so that kind of separated us a little bit, but got by him, and we were able to come home 4th. I almost got 3rd there at the end, which I mean, I'm happy about. We needed points just to lock us in, and I'm pretty sure we're close now.
And working your way up through the field, and we're taking a look at some of the replays now. A lot of traffic after that last restart. Was the car any different in traffic versus in the open air throughout the green flag runs? How much of a struggle was that, or did it feel completely natural and the 51 machine was still running great through traffic?
Yeah, it was way different behind people. It was way tighter, and that's just something you gotta test in and adjust on throughout, testing and in the race and whatever. And that's what we struggled in, because at the start by myself I was fine. Like whenever I had like a 6-7 car length gap, and then as soon as I was right behind somebody, I was super tight. So that's why I had to adjust during that pit stop. And I mean, like I said, after we had an insane truck. We had definitely had something I think that could go run with Cody.
A completely different change of pace when we go 2 weeks' time to the Martinsville Speedway. How confident are you heading into Martinsville that you can grab another top 5 and keep etching your way into locking yourself into the next round?
Yeah, I mean, my teammate Garrett Maines, he won top split there last year, so I mean, we'll have something good there, I believe, and we can maybe go there and get our second win of the year, possibly. I'm hoping we can.
Anyone else you would like to thank before we let you go here on Podium Esports?
Yeah, thank everyone at Elliott Sadler Esports for all their hard work. Brendan Kohler, Lowline Racing, James Heater, Garrett Matchburn, everybody for all the hard work. Brian for running a lot of laps for me. Sim Seats, Nutrient Solutions, everybody, my mom watching, everybody, appreciate them.
Thank you very much for joining us. Donovan Strauss, 4th place finisher for Elliott Sadler Esports. So we'll send it back to Evan Basoko. Seth DeMerchant next up in the post-race show.
Yes, Seth DeMerchant comes home second tonight for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Jeff McConey talking with the driver of the 3.
Seth, you came home P3 tonight. You had a great run at the end. First and foremost, was that a coordinated move for Jordy to let you by so you could have a run at Bias?
Yeah, I felt like I had the pace to be able to get up there and pass him, and Jordy just didn't think he had the tires left to be able to do it. So we were trying to plan to get him behind me without me losing too much speed there, because I was hauling there at the end.
You absolutely were. You were on pace to catch him. You were about half a tenth, a little more than that, quicker than him. We talked earlier in the race that it seemed that you were very loose. You were fighting the wheel throughout the entire time. Was that just something throughout the course of the race? The truck just stayed loose the entire time?
Yeah, but you know, loose is fast, and we made some adjustments there on that last pit stop that helped, though, especially get that truck a little bit more under control, and it just overstepped our boundaries there with like 5 to go and got in the wall, just trying to get there. You know, the aero push was just a little bit too much, and I plowed entry a little bit, and then I just stayed in the throttle and got loose and stuffed in the fence and almost cost myself third there with Donnie right at the end, but we were able to hold on.
Absolutely. You had a very solid run tonight, and I'm going to follow Joshua's lead here. You've got Martinsville coming up, and that's a very difficult track. How are you preparing for going from one of the longest tracks here, 1.5 miles, where you were pretty much on the throttle the entire time, to a skill track, like, not to say that Charlotte isn't skilled, but more of a driver's track, I would say, at Martinsville, where you have people that stand out, and there's no one that really hates Charlotte, but there's a lot of people that hate Martinsville.
Yeah, just a lot of the same stuff, just a lot of testing and trying to get that balance right and what's fast, but we're going in there worry-free, because I think this race will put me and Jordy both locked into the next round, so we're just gonna be doing everything we can to try to help Cozy and Braden, who are on the cut, try to get in.
Sounds good. And finally, anyone you want to thank here tonight?
Yeah, just all the guys at Altus. Jordy did a ton of laps this week trying to go as fast as we can. We missed the mark pretty bad last week, so I appreciate that. But then all our team sponsors of Logitech G, Astro Gaming, VRS, Racetech, and Cube Controls.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on a third place finish here tonight. You had a fantastic run out there. Best of luck to you in the next round if you're locked in, if you end up being locked in, and congrats on that, and best of luck next week in Martinsville.
Thanks, guys.
That's your third place finisher tonight for the Charlotte Motor Speedway, Seth the Merchant. It was a P2 tonight for Jordy Lopez Jr. Justin Prince on pit road tonight, and he's standing by.
Yes, indeed. And Jordy, you were up in the front much of this race today, able to charge away, especially the mid to second half of this race. How are you feeling about your run?
I'm feeling really good, because I just been having like bad luck all season, and it's kind of good to just have a good top 5 finish after just like hard work of practice and just doing a bunch of runs before, just to prep for this. And I'm just so happy that it paid off.
Now, when it comes to this racetrack, what were some of the tricky things when it came to the preparation and in turn the execution for tonight? Because it seemed you were very quick in the short run, especially.
Yes, so that's exactly so you had to like really prep for the long run, because it gets really loose, and if you're able to manage it, you are going to be really fast. And I was just so good in the first 20, but then after like 25, I was just struggling just a little bit, but like I was still able to like maintain my ground, and I was like really good in pit road, so that kind of made up for it.
Now, couple races left to go. Next is the paperclip, Martinsville. Your thoughts on going to a short track known for its bumping and banging and its potential for attrition?
I really like short tracks, and I feel confident about driving there. I just hope that like everything goes smooth and that I don't get wrecked or anything. But I'm going in there more comfortable now that I have solid points, and yeah, it's a great feeling.
Congratulations once again on the run, Jordy.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
And we'll continue things post-race by headed to victory lane and talking with the driver of the number 27 Toyota. Cody Bias is your winner tonight for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Cody, congratulations on the win. First, what are you this year? I know this is big for you in your point scenario.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, obviously, we've been running really, really well all season. We just haven't had things go our way. But all in all, coming to Charlotte, I knew this is probably by far my best track on the sim, and always had a good history here. The guys had a dead zone, brought a really great piece tonight, and it was fun to drive. And had a good battle with those guys up there, Jordy, Seth, Justin, all those guys that were up there. It was fun, and like you said, to finally put everything together and have a really good points tonight is what we needed, and hopefully give us maybe a little cushion in going into Martinsville. I don't know what to expect there, so it's and a little bit will help. So can't wait to get moving here.
Tell us about the ebbs and flow of this one. It looked like at least long run is what benefited you the most. Guys would be able to hang with you, and then you get about 30, 35 laps into the run, and you would stretch things out. Through the first cycle, the green flag pit stops, all was fine, but on that second one, you ended up getting suckered back to about P6 and had started to pick your way through. That's the first time Jordy was able to get a real good look in front of you, and of course the cautions changed that up, but just tell us what it was like trying to chase those guys down in the second half after being relatively in control for the first half.
I was kind of surprised. I lost a lot of time on pit exit this evening with having the first pit stall. That did not help at all. So every pit cycle I lost probably about a second and a half to 2 seconds because I built up a nice solid lead before the pit cycles start, and we would just lose it every single time. And then once I got back in traffic, the balance was completely different. It was a lot tighter than I was hoping it would be. So we adjusted for that, and I think we went a hair too far. But when that yellow came out, it saved us. I told the guys, I said, I'm going to try to get this one back for us. We've had too many of them taken away from us this year, and I wasn't going to let another one slip through my fingers again. So got up on the wheel, got the lead. Kind of burned my stuff up there at the end. Those guys were riding for the majority of that final run, Jordy and Seth, and they were making a charge there, and I guess Seth got into the wall a little bit and kind of slowed them down just enough to build a little gap there to finish the race. And like I said, there's just a really good truck. I'm glad everything went our way for once tonight, and it's good to be talking to you guys and be back in victory lane. It's been a while.
6 rounds down, 2 to go. You mentioned how much this helps you out in the points. Obviously, you go to a short track at Martinsville. Things can get messy there quick. The good result tonight, does that change how you approach the paperclip at all? What's the mentality in 2 weeks?
It's definitely go see where we are in points first off, and then try to kind of formulate a game plan from there. You know, if you want to be, I don't want to be too aggressive and get myself wrecked, and kind of, because I've already had enough bad weeks this season to where there's going to be some that actually count with only having 1 drop. So I got to kind of be careful. But Martinsville is a whole different animal. I think, ran a handful of races there in my career, and so it's going to take a lot of hard work. You got to have a really good truck there, and whatever happens to that point, and hopefully we're on the right side of things there and have a nice little cushion going into Dover, because Dover's, again, one of my other favorite tracks in the sim, and would like to be on the plus side of the bubble heading into Dover as well.
Some trials and tribulations tonight, but you fight through for the win, Cody. Congratulations on the dub. Appreciate you jumping in and chatting with us, and best of luck for the rest of this round. We'll be tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks again to Dead Zone and Deval Creative for the hard work and the awesome-looking truck. It's nice to get the 27 back up front and into victory lane.
Look good up front, too. That's the driver of the 27 and your race winner here tonight from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, Cody Bias, first top split win of 2021. So, minus my fault for a caution that broke up a long green flag stretch. The opening half of this race was somewhat predictable. We had green flag runs. We had some pit strategy play into a factor, but Cody Bias, even on the back foot, Josh, was able to come back and get his first win. Huge for him, the points on the outside looking in before this one.
And that really just shows how fast Cody Bias was tonight here at Charlotte. He got put back in the pack, moved his way right up, and on the restart, when everybody got bunched back up, he made that move to the outside and made it work. And Jeff mentioned when he made that move, it burned up his tires. He looked perfectly fine heading to the checkered flag, so he was able to manage those for the rest of the run and get that win. And it's important for Cody Bias, I think, especially with his confidence. Last time in the Coke Series was 2019, had to spend 2020 trying to get out of the Pro Series, and is now back in the qualifying qualifying iRacing series, and if he makes it into round 2, I'd be watching Cody Bias to be one of those top 20 drivers that end up being added to the bottom 20 from this year's Coke Series and the Contender Series coming up in the winter. It's going to be exciting to see exactly where Cody Bias goes here in 2021 and if he can make that journey back to the Coke Series for 2022.
He showed you tonight he can fight with the best of them, Jeff. And of course, a very different kind of race as we go to some smaller tracks. And of course, the ever so challenging Martinsville for round 7, expecting that to be a totally different race than what we saw here tonight on the intermediate Charlotte.
You are absolutely right, and let me tell you, I'm beyond excited. Martinsville is one of my personal favorite tracks, but it's also one of my favorites to watch because you have to be aggressive. You have to be willing to give some. You have to be willing to rub them and push them up out of the way and make sure that you get what you want. It is a selfish track. It's where you show who's the best driver and who's out there just turning laps. I'm very excited for it. Someone I'm going to be keeping my eye on is the team over at Bobby Dale Earnhardt. I mentioned them earlier tonight, but you want good short track drivers? Those are some really good short track drivers. Parker Retzlaff has been tearing it up in the ARCA series. He's been all over the Midwest racing for quite a few years now, racing short tracks. Keep an eye on them. They are going to be very strong at Charlotte. I think we're going to see one of them come out on top, but we'll have to see because just as much as Talladega is, it can also go south very quickly for you at the short tracks like Martinsville. It's aggressive, it's fun, but it's going to be a great race, and I cannot wait for it. But Justin, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree with you. I think there's a good chance they show some good speed, but I'm also keeping my eye on drivers like Donovan Strellis to see how they battle at that racetrack because they're one of the drivers that are in the mix that can't necessarily afford to take a drop right now because of some of the struggles earlier on this season. Some of those drivers are going to start to really show the sense of urgency, guys, because there's only a couple races to go. And Martinsville is a challenging racetrack where you need to get track position. So don't be surprised, absolutely, to see drivers send it very aggressively to try and do so. It's going to be a tough race overall, especially, Evan, because for those drivers that can't have a bad race, it's going to be very vital they also keep their trucks clean, and that's going to be a balancing act. That's going to be like a tightrope, essentially, all race long.
Not a fun position to be in going to Martinsville because you got to be aggressive there. Not a place where tiptoeing is very easy. The good news is if you don't want to wait 2 weeks' time till the next round of this qualifying iRacing series, plenty of upcoming action here on Podium Esports, including tomorrow night as Next Gen Fast Fridays continue for the Virtual Auto Club Speedway. That's tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time here at twitch.tv/Podium Esports. And then the MPI Cup Series goes racing at Kentucky for round 18 on the 23rd. That one is a 9:15 start. Monday Night Racing continues Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern at twitch.tv/Podium2 as they take the Indy cars in the month of May to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then the big boys, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers are here at the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. That one on Tuesday the 25th with an 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time start at twitch.tv/iRacing. More action with the PCA Sim Racing Club at Mid-Ohio for round 6. That one on Wednesday at 8 o'clock at the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel. And in the Dirt Car Sprint Championship heads to the dirt version of Lanier on the 26th at 9 o'clock. Good a double dose of action. Twitch.tv/Podium2. And of course, we are back in action June 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern, Jeff. But before we step aside, tell us more about what we'll see on track tomorrow night for our third installment of Next Gen Fast Fridays.
Well, we're heading over to Auto Club Speedway, and that's going to be a very fun race. It's going to take a lot of talent, just like this race tonight. You got to carry momentum through the corners. You got to be smart. The only difference is this is going to be a fixed setup series. So McConey Setup Shop has brought out a custom fixed setup. That's already been emailed out if you signed up already. But if you haven't signed up yet, it is completely free. Go out there, race for some prizes, race on Podium Esports. It's going to be a ton of fun. Evan, I don't know if you're calling the race tomorrow, but you called week 1, and Josh, you were here weeks 1 and 2, I believe it was, and it's a ton of fun, and it's completely free to enter. So www.mcconeysetupshop.com/event-signups. Go over there, sign up. It's free. It's a ton of fun. You get your chance to be live on Podium Esports. That is something very cool to have your name up in lights here.
The only thing I can promise is that I'm not driving. That's it for us, though, here tonight from Charlotte. For James Pike, Gary Sexton, Cisco Scarbuza, John Theodore, and the entire team at Podium Esports, and for your broadcast crew tonight. For our producer, Ryan Bauer, for Justin Prince, Jeff Baconi, Joshua Lee, and myself, Evan Pasoko. I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Cody Bias on his first win of the season. We're back in 2 weeks' time, Thursday, June the 3rd, from the virtual Martinsville Speedway. That race and every race of the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series can be found exclusively here on Podium Esports. Until next time, good night from Charlotte.